Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today is an exciting day. I'm going to be reducing my Austrian pine back in size to make it more compact. The back buds on the branches are now the same color as the older needles, so they've hardened off. They've kind of matured. And they're strong enough that many of the branches can be pruned back to these new back buds. So I can take the tips off the branches just to reduce the overall size of the branch to make the tree more compact. I think this tree was getting a little too wide, for the size of the trunk. I think generally on a pine, if you can bring it more compact, I would recommend you do it because it's easier to grow a branch longer than it is to shorten a branch. So yeah, a lot of this growth is strong enough in here that I can take the tips off the branches. So these will now be the ends of the branches, my new back buds. So should be quite exciting. There's also a lot of the older needles, like up in the canopy here, that are shading out some of the back buds that are hidden underneath them. So that, these back buds aren't getting much light in here. So by, taking the tips off up here, I'll get a lot more light to all the branches on the tree. And it should look quite nice, I think. I hope. On branches that don't have strong enough back buds, I'll keep the outer foliage and wait another year to reduce those branches back. So I'll have to treat each branch separately, evaluate it, and see how far back I can push the branch today. I'm going to start the pruning on this branch here. And this branch has a few problems. It has one branch that crosses over top of the one underneath. And I've kind of been waiting to correct that problem for a while. And I think finally today I can prune off the part of the branch that's crossing because I have a lot of new back buds back here. I'll have to look and see where I can prune this branch that's crossing, how far back I can prune it to. To clearly get a view of the branch, I'm looking underneath. Okay, here goes my first cut. So I'm going to take this branch right back to here. Like that. So that takes the tip off that crossing branch. And now I'm also going to reduce the length of this branch back to the back buds. So I'll leave a little room for dieback, so I'll prune it right here. Like that, taking that tip off also. Now on this branch, I don't have the two branches crossing over top of each other, so they're sorted out nicely. I can also reduce the length of this tip, so I'll bring it back to here, like that. And this tip here can be brought back to here, like that. So the overall silhouette of that branch is much more compact now. Towards the back of this branch, I have another branch coming off, and it's getting quite long too. And I've got lots of back buds in here, so I'll take the tip off that also, like that. So that's got this number 2 branch. This will be my number 1 branch over here. That's got my number 2 branch reduced down quite nicely. I may have to do some bud selecting in here and some further reduction in future, but I think that's a good step forward for that branch today. So let's go down to our lowest branch, our number 1 branch here now, and do the same thing on this branch, reducing it more compact. So I'll begin with this branch here. There's a branch tip here I can reduce. It was getting quite long. That's come off. There's a branch tip here that can be reduced, like that. Over here I've got a lot of back budding in this area, and I've got a lot of length out here. So I can take these shoots back, that one to there. I can take this one back to, I'll take it back to here. This one back to here. And this one back to here. So I haven't reduced these tips too far back. Maybe my eventual goal will be back towards here. But I've got to make sure there's enough strength in the branch, otherwise your whole branch could die off. And I have a lot of smaller buds out here, So I'll have a lot of shoots to select from in the future. There's a branch growing between two branches here that just needs to come off. It's shading out a lot of the branches, so it's the third branch. Off it goes. So that's looking much more compact, this branch also. I've reduced the two lowest branches, and now I've got to work my way up the tree, reducing the branch structure back so each branch gets light. There's no point reducing these ones back into the shade of the longer ones above, so the whole tree has to be brought back evenly. I'm going to rotate around to this next branch here. So this branch above here is shading out the one underneath. So I'll start with that one and we'll get it reduced back. So there's some good buds in closer to the trunk there. I'll take this one back to here, taking that tip off. I will take this one back to here, taking that double tip off, and this one back to here. That reduces that branch a lot in this area. Now there is some other sections to this branch, so take this back to here, this one back to here, and I think that one's okay. I'll take this one back to here. That's also got this branch more compact. I can eventually reduce this tip back, but for now I'm leaving a little more strength in that branch. I'm going to have a look at this branch now. So definitely this long part here can be removed. That tip. The tip here, I can just take the terminal bud off. There's a lot of back budding happening on that branch, but it's not mature enough to prune back to yet. I've got a good bud developing here, and there's one on the opposite side, but I'm not sure if I can prune that branch tip off yet. It may weaken the branch too much. I'll take part of it off. I'll take part of that off, and then I can reduce that branch back later. This one can be reduced back. I'm going to start some work in the upper canopy. I've got a lot of really strong shoots and a lot of needle density up here. Too much, and it's shading out all these lower branches. So I think today I'll also have to come in and remove a lot of the older needles off the tree just to get more light into all these branches. It's just too dense in this upper canopy. So I've got two shoots in the upper canopy. This back one is going to be my sacrifice branch. I'm going to let it grow really long for a couple of years, which will help thicken up and unify the trunk. And then it'll get pruned off, you know, in 2 or 3 years, maybe even 4 or 5 years, who knows. So that's a sacrifice branch, and this branch here represents my apex of the tree, so kind of my highest point on the tree. So yeah, 2 shoots up top that I've got to keep in mind. So I'll prune back the upper canopy where I can. Like here I've got 2 buds below, so I can take the tip off that branch. This one also I have buds below, further back on the branch, so I can take the tip off. In the upper canopy, I'm not finding a lot of back buds deep in towards the trunk of the tree, and I think that's because it's so dense. There's, you know, back buds don't really form in shady areas of the tree. They kind of need full sun. So I'm going to be doing a lot of needle thinning today. I'll remove all the needles off the bottoms of the branches, and that'll help get more light down to these lower branches. And I'll also be reducing the needle density. Some of these branches have a lot of needles on the end of one branch, so I'll reduce that number to a more reasonable number, maybe 8 needles. and that'll let more light into the whole tree. So that'll be my next step. I'll start reducing the needle density in the upper canopy. I'll start by cutting off all the needles that are pointing downward. I like to cut the needles off. You can pluck them by hand, but maybe it's good, but I don't know. So that's got the lower needles off that branch. I'll just continue doing that for the entire apex. You can see how removing these lower needles up here on these upper branches, how it opens up a space there, which allows more light, more air circulation in the branches, and you can see the structure more. So yeah, it really opens the tree up, and it's really good for the tree health-wise also. I've got the lower needles removed in the upper canopy, so I'll rotate it around. You can see how much it's opened it up. It's just amazing, the difference. You can see the branch structure. All the back buds that are in the upper canopy are getting light now. Light's filtering through to these lower branches. So looking much better. My next step, I'll remove all the lower needles on on the remaining branches. These lower needles, they don't get a whole lot of sunlight down there. So they're not that efficient. And it's more important to get light to the lower branches and more air circulation in your tree than keeping these lower needles on. It makes the tree look very neat. Pine trees in nature, most of the needles are all growing on the top branch or the upper surface of the branch. So to have needles underneath doesn't really, in miniature, it doesn't really look right, but it can. I mean, I've seen trees that are just left full and they look quite nice and natural. But I've also seen, trees that are all pruned underneath and they look good too. So it's I guess a matter of style, but generally in nature, if we look up here even, a pine branch is fairly clean underneath. However, there's exceptions to the rules. If you look at the branch tips there's needles all the way around it. It's not clean underneath that branch. But generally the older branches, there's no light underneath them, so they kind of get sparse underneath and full on top. So that's what we try and do with our bonsai pines. I've got all the lower needles removed from all the branches. So you can see it's looking much more clean underneath the branches. Looks a little more miniature. The new needles are quite a bit smaller, but they'll grow throughout the summer. So, they'll get longer, probably twice that length by the time fall rolls around. My next step is to balance the needle density. So you can see up in the apex, there's a lot of needles. It's almost, you can't see the branches because it's so dense up here. Whereas down here on some of the lower branches, you can see all the branch structure. It's less dense. So I want to reduce the amount of needles up top here. So plucking out a lot of the old needles to kind of match the density of the top to the bottom of the tree. To thin the needles up top, I'm just coming in, reaching in by hand and plucking out some of the older needles just to lighten up this area. I'm just plucking out one pair of needles at a time. That way you don't rip the buds at all. And I'm leaving my sacrifice branch at the back here. I'm leaving all the needles on that, so I want to get as much vigor into that branch as possible. My goal is to be able to look in at the upper canopy and see all the branch structure and the trunk, so it's a little more light and airy. As I begin to open up the upper canopy, I can see into the branch structure more, so I'm pruning off some of the little tiny branches and buds that aren't growing in good directions. Where a branch tip has 3 branches coming from one branch, I'm reducing it back to 2, and general maintenance pruning in the upper structure. That'll also help lighten up the canopy, getting more light to the lower branches. If anything, I want this one off, right? I'm stepping back now, having a look at the tree, the overall design and how it's doing. I'm really happy with the lowest branch on the right-hand side. I think it's looking really good. The one on the left-hand side here is still too long, but that will get reduced by probably midsummer maybe. I probably could even do it now, but I'm going to wait. The density, I maybe a little long in the upper canopy here. That branch looks a little vigorous. I think I'll do a bit of trimming there. It's starting to get a little bit of style up top. It's not just like a helmet on top. You can see the branch structure in that. It's getting quite nice. The trunk is still really, you know, it doesn't really have a lot going for it other than the nice bark texture. It's got that, still got that kind of ball where the whorl of branches was when I originally got the tree. Then it goes a little skinnier and then thicker. So I'm hoping by growing that leader, that sacrifice branch out the back, that it'll help unify the tree. If I let that grow, it'll thicken the whole tree up, and hopefully it'll help improve the, you know, the change of diameters going up the trunk. Yeah, try and smooth that trunk out a bit. That's my goal anyway. Root base is looking good. I'm happy with that. I still may remove this branch someday. I don't know. I might keep this as my first branch over here. That's a possibility for the future. I'll see how that branch develops. Maybe I'll get to like it more, but I'm thinking, I don't know. We'll see. Okay. I think that's it for, you know, style-wise on the tree. I'll spin it around so you can see it from all directions. So that's the front. Right-hand side. The back. The left-hand side. And back to the front. It is possible in the future I could change the front of the tree also. I'll examine it. Maybe there's a better front too. I don't think it'll wildly change, but maybe, you know, just some tweaking here and there. Who knows? But I think that's all the work on the Austrian pine for today. I'll show you the amount of needles I removed. So there's the tree, and here's the amount of needles I removed. It's quite a pile. Yeah. And there's the tree. Looks pretty nice. Now you can see all in the structure. The interior of the tree. Branches are looking quite nice. If we go underneath the tree and look up, you can see a lot of the branch structure from below. Yeah, interesting. The new needles for this year have hardened off on the tree. They've turned a dark green color, so I can begin to fertilize the tree, and I'll do that very weakly at first and kind of increase the amount of fertilizer as the summer goes on. I just add a little bit of 20-20-20 powdered fertilizer to my 2-liter watering can, just a little bit like that. Sort of a pinch. Then I'll stir that up. And I can water the tree. So here I go. It's time now for today's updates. My first update for today is my Ficus religiosa, my larger one. And I'm thinking of changing the front. I want this more kind of dominant leader, more in the front, so probably more somewhere there. And then I've got a branch growing back in towards the center of the tree that I'll need to prune off today. The tree is about to enter a growth spurt. You can see the new buds at the tip here, so it's about to explode in growth. So I want to get the leader pruned down so I get all the growth happening all over the tree and not just up top on the tips here. I'll spin the tree around so you can just see what's happening. So you can see this leader here grows back over top of the rest of the canopy, this one right here. So that's got to come off, and also the little branch behind it. So this will be the new leader coming out front here. Here's the branch I'm pruning off. So I've got my branch pruners, and I'll come in and make the big cut. So here I go. Just like that. There's a look at the tree now. That's the branch I pruned off, quite long. But I still want to reduce the apex down further. It's getting too tall compared to the rest of the canopy. So I've got a leaf coming out the front here. So I'll prune just above there. Like that. The leaves that the tree has on now are the giant indoor leaves. So hopefully, being outside, the new leaves will grow in a little smaller than this. So I'll rotate the tree around so you can have a look at it from all angles. So that'll probably be somewhere around there, the new front. I'll rotate it around. And coming back. I'll put the Ficus religiosa back in the greenhouse, and we'll get up tree number 2 for today's updates. My second update for today is my tiger bark ficus. It's growing over an artificial rock that I made, and it's growing in a 3D printed pot. The tree has been growing really well. You can see the root over rock composition. And I may, if I find a real rock that kind of is this shape and style, I may replace the artificial rock with a real rock someday, but I don't know, maybe not. So the tree, yeah, it's been growing really well, getting tall and bushy. So when a ficus gets to about this point, it's a good time to prune it back, give it a nice, good hard pruning, restoring its shape. So I'll do that today. I'll begin by placing my hand in front of the tree, kind of getting an idea of where I want the canopy, probably about there, I would think. Yeah, so just kind of integrating that side branch into the rounded kind of canopy. So I'll give it a profile type pruning first. All right, so here was that branch. So I wanted it about here. So I'll need to prune this main leader down. I've got a branch coming forward here, one off to the side and towards the back, and another one here. I'll prune it off to here for now. This might be a little high, but can always shorten it later. So that gets most of the height down. There's a few branches here I'll prune just above an outward facing leaf, like that. One here. Here. Keeping my profile in mind. I'll see how that looks from the front. I'm looking from the front now. And yeah, I think that main leader needs to be pruned back shorter, probably to that branch that's coming out front. So I'll do that first. That looks better. It kind of equalizes the vigor in the branches that form the upper canopy. So now I've got a lot of branches that are growing in towards the center of the tree, interfering with other branches. So I'll give those a prune next, keeping all my branches kind of fanning out from the center of the canopy. That's got all the crossing branches, all the branches that are growing in towards the center of the tree removed. So everything is now kind of fanning outwards from the center of the canopy. I think now there's a lot of branches that are quite long and need pruning back so they start to get a bit of movement and taper to them, just to make it all a little more compact. So I'll do that now. I think that's got the pruning in check. I'm just still looking. I think at the back there I've got a crossing branch that kind of interferes with the trunk line. I think that's got to be removed. So I'll do that. That looks better. And I'm not sure about that little straight branch here. That looks much better. I'm happy with the tree now. I'll clean up the bench and we'll have a closer look at it. There's a look at my tiger bark ficus on the left-hand side there, all trimmed up, and it's printed in a 3D printed pot, and the style is to look like the big cement pots in Vietnam. And they typically grow them on these columns, like you can see over on the right-hand side and in the middle there. And I'll print up columns for this one. I just haven't had time to do that. It'll come in the future, but the file for these pots and stands, I lost it when my computer crashed a couple of years ago, so I'll have to recreate it and post it on Thingiverse. So that'll be coming. These other two trees are Ficus microcarpus, and you can see the new leaves growing at the tips. These are the new outdoor leaves. The ones that are on the interior here that don't look so good, those were the indoor leaves. And when I moved the trees outside, they got a little sunburned and distressed, and so they don't look so good. I'm going to let the trees grow with the new outdoor leaves to at least probably twice this size, and then I'll come in and possibly even defoliate them, reduce them back, pruning them back to shape. So that'll probably be coming, I would think, midsummer. I'm really happy with these 3D printed pots. They're printed from the Engen plastic by ColorFab, and they've stood up to everything. Heat, cold, everything. They've just been wonderful. So I think that's definitely a good plastic to use for these 3D printed pots. And I think these pots will last a long time. I haven't seen any signs of deterioration yet, so may even last the rest of my life. I don't know. This tiger bark ficus was the remains of an air layer. It was one that Michael in our club, he air layered the top off. So it was just a stump here originally. And that's where the original trunk was air layered off. And then I've grown all this structure in the previous years. So it's, you know, it's still a bit of a, I wouldn't call it ugly. I think it's beautiful, but it's got a lot of character to it and a lot of scarring and interesting features. So it's, I really like the tree. I think it's just going to continue to improve in the future. But yeah, I think it's come a long way from a stump from an air layer, that's for sure. The last update for today is my Bougainvillea bonsai. This is a Pink Pixie variety, and it's got its first flower. My Bougainvillea has adapted to the outdoors, so it still has its winter leaves on, but there's new summer growth coming in all over. So eventually I'll remove all those old leaves and just keep the fresh green ones. Its first flowers come, and I'm hoping that's the first of many flowers for this summer. I would really like to see this tree all full of flowers. I think it would look fantastic. I will be repotting this tree this summer. This tree is getting to be, I think it's over 20 years old now. And it just started off as a pencil size cutting, perfectly straight. I think my first cut was right here, and you can still see the scar where I reduced the straight trunk down to a sort of a stub or a short little trunk, and then I regrew all the rest and the branches and everything. And yeah, I'm still working on it. It's still got a lot of refinement to go on it, but I'm happy. It's been a nice bonsai over the last 20 years. If you stick around after the video today, I'll show you an update to my 1972 Ford F250 crew cab pickup truck that I use in the orchard. That's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone. Today on the 1972 Ford F250 crew cab, the truck for the orchard, or whatever I use it for, I am continuing to remove the carpet glue off the floor in the front. I've got the driver's seat back out. It was just placed in here temporarily. So that's what I'm working on today. So I've got to do this strip all the way across here and get that all scraped clean, like the back is. The back's nice and clean now. And then I think my next job, I've got to fix the floor over there, and I got to get this gas tank out and see if I can get that fixed. I have been working all afternoon on scraping this glue off the floor, and it's pretty good now. It's clean the whole floor now, except for all my junk in there. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. This side, I don't see any visible holes, but the metal doesn't look the thickest in this area. It's kind of similar to the other side. It's hasn't gone through, but I think it's pretty close. So that's probably all the work I'll get done on the truck today. It was a good day getting that floor cleaned up. I've got the back seat of the truck cleaned out. I've got all my tools and junk in the back here now. So my next job is to get this fuel tank out so I can see the back side of it and hopefully find that leak. I do have a line on a new gas tank. I was talking to someone from a parts supplier, and they said they know a guy who goes down to the southern states every kind of month and brings back fuel tanks with him. So I put my order in for a 72 in-cab fuel tank. So we'll see what happens. I'll know probably mid-July if he can find something. So in the meantime, I'm going to try and fix this one. I've got the gas tank out of the truck. It only took about like 3 minutes. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 bolts at the top and 2 at the bottom. I just disconnected the hose, the electrical, and the filler hose there, and it came out really easily. So I was looking at the thing. The paint was off in this one area, which generally indicates that gasoline's attacking the paint and there's a leak. So you can see all the metal, solder or solder that they put in to try and fill the holes. Oh, and I think I see another pinhole right there. So there's one on that side still. This is where I patched it before, and that's holding really nicely. So that's the front side, or the side that faces the back seat. And I've got it tipped over. So there was a rusty spot down the other end, and it looked like one of the seams up top here. There was a bit of fuel leaking out of there. So I've just got it turned over so I can find the fuel leaks. It should sort of slowly seep through, and then I can look around for all the wet spots and see if I can patch it up. I don't think there's so many repairs done on it. The guy said when he was doing the tank that it was in really rough shape. So I guess, yeah, it was just too far gone. I have no idea why they rust out so much inside the truck here. Like, they're completely out of the weather. It must all be due to condensation, I guess. So here's looking underneath now. So you can see the rusty spot under there. That may indicate a fuel leak. So I'll let it sit for a little bit, then I'll turn it back over and I'll check for all the spots that are leaking. If I can find them. They're not easy to find. Just a small, the tiniest of little pinholes makes a big difference. Like it makes a lot of smell inside the vehicle. I've had the fuel tank sitting on its side for quite a while, maybe 10-15 minutes, and all looks good. The seam up top didn't seem to be leaking at all, and if it is, it's very, very minor. But right here where it's being repaired with the solder or solder, it's definitely wet there. So that's the area that's leaking, and that makes sense because when I filled the tank to a certain level, the smell got worse. So that would be that level right there. So I'm going to scrape that down and clean it up. And I think the fuel tank's definitely shot. I was scraping over on this side. There was a few little tiny spots of wetness over there that I scraped down with sandpaper and put some putty over top. They were very, very minor. But I think once I get this finished, the smell should go away, but the fuel tank's definitely shot. You can see it's being repaired all over. The metal's really thin, so hopefully I'll get that new tank in July. If not, I can always order the brand new reproduction tank. It's really expensive by the time it gets shipped to Canada, but if I have to do that, I'll do that. The gas tank putty is on, and while that's drying, it's kind of starting to get a little harder now. I am in here and I'm cleaning. I got my bucket of soapy water. I'm cleaning all behind here. You can see along the seams, there's like the factory seam sealer. It was a black seam sealer, and over the age, it's just disintegrated. It just peeled off like nothing. It wasn't even sticking anymore. You can see a stripe of it across there and leaves the bare metal underneath. So because I'm not driving this truck in winter, and I don't think I'll ever, have problems with it rusting, I'm just going to leave it open, because anything like seam sealer and that, you get rust underneath and it just keeps migrating. So I'm going to be careful. Everything else is looking quite good. I've got to clean up in here and paint everything. So that's my task while the gas tank putty dries. And then I should be able to reassemble everything. As I was cleaning the back here behind the fuel tank, I was looking at these and I thought, is that supposed to be like that? And I looked and the other side is exactly the same. And I thought, that doesn't look right. And so I put some weight on the outside of the cab. I don't know if you can see it, but it flexes that crack open. There's a crack in this kind of cross beam at the back of the cab. So that's not good. And I'm going to have to get that fixed. The gas tank bolts across. When I push down on the cab, I can also see this back panel flexing a bit. So it's definitely, every time you hit a bump, it puts a bit of strain on that. And the gas tank's bolted across here. So, to this cross beam and up here. So it's putting the gas tank under a bit of strain. It's acting like a structural member of the gas tank, which isn't good either. So I think I'm going to have to come up with a solution and get this fixed. It definitely needs like a beam or something put in underneath or up top here somehow between the gas tank and the, what's here already. So yeah, I'm going to have to fix that. I may have to put the truck together for now. I mean, the fuel tank comes out really easily. But yeah, definitely something that I've got to get fixed for the future. That looks better. It kind of equalizes the vigor in all those kind of tree... I cannot see that, Nigel. I'll begin by placing my hand over the I'm really happy with these 3D The last update for today is my Bougainvillea bonsai. This is a Pink